Ooh. I love your keepa. You got your keepa going on there. Yeah. Looking great. Looking good in your keepa.
Well, you guys
All right, y'all. I'm sorry to interrupt your conversation, but I know. But we're here to let's have Shabbat, and this is a special Shabbat. This is a refugee Shabbat that it's happening all over the country. And we have Anna Taylor here, who I'll introduce for real when I invite her up here. We'll have her talk after the Amidah. Okay, we're on page 120 of your prayer books. If you want to follow along for lighting of the candles.
All right, let's do this.
Ooh, do your first try. Ask the question. Yes. Wow, magical.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Wow, that was he didn't read anything. That was completely memorized. Well done. You got some you got some rabbi points there. Okay. I think we're on page 128. I'm going to invite some of the Mitra Bros up here. As you can tell, my voice isn't doing so well, and originally they weren't coming tonight, but as you can hear my voice, I didn't really want to subject you to it. So thank goodness they decided to make an exception, and they came by after I asked them. Thank you guys. You're really super helpful. Anyways, Hinei Mato, page 128.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, יאללה לה, יאללה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, יאללה לה, יאללה לה 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 לה.
Okay, we're moving over to Lechado D on page 138 of our prayer books. We're going to recite today paragraphs 1, 5, and 9. When we arrive on paragraph 9, I invite you all to stand up and look towards the entrance as we greet the Shabbat bride.
Lechado di likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat mekabela. 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 Shamor ezachot dibbur echad, ishmi'anu el hamimcha. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shemo tiferet ve'letila. Lechado di likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat mekabela. Lechado di likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat mekabela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki ba'orech u'mi'ori. Uri, uri, shitaveri, kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lechado di likrat את בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצורה, תוכנו עם סגולה, בואי כלה, בואי כלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בתני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בתני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בתני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בתני שבת נקבלה.
You may be seated. We're now moving to, all right, there we go. We're now moving to Shalom Aleichem on page 142 of your prayer books.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Nihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moachem Leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Nihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bachuni Leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Nihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzidchem Leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Nihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Okay, we're now turning to page 144 for the Chatzi Kaddish. I'm gonna attempt to sing the Chatzi Kaddish. How it goes. Yeah, I saw something drop too. I don't know where it went. Yeah. Yitkada v'yitkada shemei rabba ve'alma divrach yotev yamlik malchutev b'chayechon u'yomechon u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael v'agala u'vizman kariv v'imaru amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Le'alam Ulal Me'al Maya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yipar V'yipromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Dekudesha Barichu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'almam v'imaru amen. We now move to the Baruch Hu on page 146 and I invite you to rise with us.
La 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 la. Ya la la ya la la la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch et Adonai. Hamevorach. Baruch Adonai Hamevorach.
seated. We now move to the middle of page 148.
Umaviyom, 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 umevilala. Umavil ben yom uvilala. Adonai tzvot shemo, el chavekayam, tamidim lo. Alenu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, amarim v'aravim. Umaviyom, 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 umevin lala. Umavil ben yom uven lala. Adonai tzvot shemo, el chai v'kayam, tamidim lo. Alenu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, amarim v'aravim. Ya la la la, 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 ya la la.
Let's read together on the bottom of page 151 in the English. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love, this holiest of your works, living language that gives it form. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Now move to the Shema on page 152. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Malechuto, Le'olam Avad. V'ahavta 154. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol avecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meyodecha v'hayu hadivarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinartam levarnecha v'divarta ba'am v'shivtecha ha'bevetecha uvlektecha ha'vaderech u'shoftecha uvkumecha ukshartam leyot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha lema'an tizkeru v'atzitem et chol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim le'elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem meretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai emet. All right, we move over to page 158 from Micha Mocha.
Ya la 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 la, ya 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 la 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 la.
162.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. בני ראובן, בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית עולם.
We now move into the Amidah, starting on page 164. And when you arrive there, I invite you to stand with us. Adonai sefatati lach u'viyadi dahilateka. Adonai sefatati lach u'viyadi dahilateka. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Eloheinu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor, HaNorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaTov, V'zocher Chatzei Avot Imahot, U'mivim Lulah B'nei Bneihem, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezras Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, mekayem hatoratav rav le'oshia. Mashiach haruach marin haga Hashem, mekayem chayim ve'chesed. Mekayem hakol ve'rachamim rabim, tzomech noflim ve'rokeh kolim, u'matir asurim, u'mekayem nato v'shenei atar, mitamot ha'el gevurot, u'midom me'elah, melech be'mi u'mechayem, u'matmir Yeshua, v'ne'eman atah v'chayot ha'kol, Baruch atah Adonai, mekayem ha'kol. You'll now continue silently until page 180. You may be seated whenever you like.
Oh, say Booyah, say Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Vimru, Amen. Oh, say Shalom Bimruma. Say Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Vimru, Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael.
All right, allow me to introduce our guest speaker. Anna Taylor is a supervising attorney of the Alaska Institute for Justice. She started working with the AIJ as a staff attorney in March 2014 in the Juneau office. And in February 2018, she moved to the Anchorage office. Since joining AIJ, Anna has helped clients get U visas as victims of crime, T visas as victims of human trafficking, and green cards as victims of domestic violence, and asylum as survivors of persecutions. She regularly does presentations on working with immigrant survivors of domestic violence, human trafficking, including SRT training in Anchorage, Ketchikan, and Fairbanks. Thank you, Anna, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Great. Well, thank you all for having me. I love my work. I love talking about my work, and I'm just really excited to see people who want to learn about it. So I'm Anna Taylor. I'm the supervising attorney at the Alaska Institute for Justice. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the organization as a whole, and then I'll talk about kind of immigration and how that affects people, and then the work that we do to try to get people safety and security in the United States. So the Alaska Institute for Justice is a nonprofit that was formed in 2005. We started out as the Alaska Immigration Justice Project. And then kind of as our mission expanded, we changed the name of the organization to the Alaska Institute for Justice The legal program is still called the Alaska Immigration Justice Project. So it's a little confusing. I will use them interchangeably because I work for the legal program. So we have the legal program. We have three separate kind of departments at AIJ. We have the legal program, and then we have the Language Interpreter Center, and then we have the Climate Justice Policy and Research Department. So the legal program provides representation to immigrants in the United States or people that want to bring their family to the United States in immigration proceedings. So basically, we're trying to get green cards, citizenship, getting people stable immigration status. The Language Interpreter Center, which the legal department works with pretty closely, trains interpreters, and then has a nice online platform where you can request interpreters. The online platform is great because at first the requests go out to Alaska interpreters that we've trained. So we know that they're trained in interpretation, they understand the ethics of interpretation. And then if there isn't somebody available in Alaska, it kicks out to a nationwide network. So we've got lots of options for interpretation and translation. And then kind of the last thing the Language Interpreter Center does is helps organizations or businesses come up with language access plans so that people know what to do when somebody comes in the door who's limited English proficient. They know, how to figure out what language the person speaks and how to find an interpreter. And the goal is to figure that out ahead of time. So it's a hard thing to figure out on the fly. And then the last department that to be honest, I'm a little less familiar with because we work with them a little bit less, is the Climate Change and the Justice and Research Department. They are working for a community-based climate change adaptation that protects the human rights of everyone. So basically, they're working with some monitoring programs to kind of monitor permafrost and see the effects of climate change. And then they're working to address climate change in a way that's respectful of people's rights so that you're not just going into a community and saying, all right, move. You're working with the community to figure out what they need to address climate change. So those are kind of our three departments. People ask that a lot. So the legal department takes all kinds of immigration cases, but we prioritize cases involving crime victimization. We get grants from the federal government that enables us to provide free services to people who are victims of crime. So we have a grant that covers anybody who's a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault in rural Alaska, which is basically not Anchorage or Fairbanks. We have a nice broad grant that lets us provide services to victims of crime, and that can range from domestic violence to something like a robbery or a non-intimate partner assault. So that's a nice broad grant we can use. And then we have a grant that provides funding for victims of human trafficking, so labor and sex trafficking. Right now, we have about 400 open cases. Between October of last year and December of last year, we provided services to 216 crime victims. 25 of them were human trafficking victims, 6 were survivors of sexual assault, 139 survivors of domestic violence, and then 21 miscellaneous. So miscellaneous covers, like I said, something like robbery or a standard assault that's not intimate partner violence. About half of our clients are from Central America. So Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. And then probably the next biggest population that we serve are people from the Philippines. Then from there, it becomes kind of all over the world. As you are probably familiar, Mountain View is the most diverse neighborhood in the country. And so that's reflected in our clientele. So we've got kind of those cases, and then we are working on a program to provide pro bono attorneys for Afghans who are seeking asylum. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. That ties in a little bit more closely with the Refugee Shabbat. So a very, very quick primer on immigration. There's a whole slew of statuses that you can have. The most vulnerable, the people that we are really concerned about, are people who are undocumented. So those are people who entered the United States without authorization and then never got status, or people who had a temporary visa and then overstayed and no longer have status. And The reason why I say that we're concerned about them, I mean, we're concerned about everybody, but particularly them, is that they are the most vulnerable to crime victimization. Because those are the people who they're afraid to have any interaction with law enforcement. They might not have a social security number, which means you can't get a bank account, you can't get a credit card, people have trouble filing their taxes. You're very limited in what you can do, and you have this constant fear of deportation. And that is something that abusers or perpetrators of crime will use against their victims. They'll say things like, you can't go to the police because you'll get deported. That's not true. Local police should not be concerned about immigration status, but it's a very scary threat. Or abusers will say things like, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to call ICE and they're going to deport you. And again, really scary. Other threats could be like, if you go to the domestic violence shelter, no one will understand you because you don't speak English. And that's a reflection of how important our language interpreter center is in their work and making sure that people are able to access interpreters so that we can understand what people need. So that's kind of the doom and gloom of undocumented people. We will talk about how we try to fix that. So there's light at the end of the tunnel. A step up from that in terms of safety and security are people with non-immigrant visas. So they have permission to be in the United States, but there are some limitations on that. They can be here for a certain amount of time, or they have to work for a certain employer. There's a whole slew of visas. They all have their own little requirements, not little, they have their own requirements. Kind of moving up in your security, you get to lawful permanent residents. Lawful permanent residents can live in the United States. They can indefinitely, they can work at any job. They have social security numbers, so they can pay into social security. They get paid out of social security when it's time. That's a really secure status. You can still get deported, but that's if you get convicted of certain crimes. It's a much more extensive process. It's a much more secure, lawful permanent residence is a much more secure status. Lawful permanent residents have green cards. So sometimes I'll use both those terms. And then kind of the pinnacle of safety and security in the United States is naturalized US citizens. For immigrants, it's naturalized US citizens. Naturalized US citizens have the same rights as anybody who was born in the United States. The only exception is they can't be president, which I think is probably not going to be an issue for the vast majority of US citizens. So what can we do to help people? I guess is the real question. There are three types of visas that we use for victims of crime kind of the most frequently. They're not the only options, they're just kind of the most frequent ones. So we have VAWA petitions, which are under the Violence Against Women Act. That's a way for survivors of domestic violence to get their green cards. We have U visas, which are visas for victims of crime, and T visas, which are visas for victims of human trafficking. So VAWA petitions, in a perfect world, US citizens would marry immigrants, the US citizens, they'd have a wonderful, healthy, respectful relationship, and the US citizens would petition for the immigrants would get their green cards, everybody would be safe and secure. Unfortunately, after a lot of advocacy and a lot of hard work, Congress recognized that that's not the world we live in. And so they created a way for people who are being abused by US citizens or lawful permanent residents to get their green card without their abuser's involvement. Takes a long time, it's a lot of work, but it's a great way to, it keeps the abuser doesn't find out about it. It's a way for people to get safe without having to involve their abuser. And so they get green cards. U visas are visas for victims of crime. So violent crime who have been helpful in the investigation of that crime. So this is a way for the police or law enforcement it encourages people who have been victims of crime to come forward, to talk to law enforcement. It can help kind of build relationships between law enforcement and immigrant communities. And at the end, the immigrant gets a 4-year visa. After 3 years with that visa, they can apply for their green card. And then after 5 years with their green card, they can become US citizens. So it's a long path, but it's a path to citizenship. And then the third option that we kind of handle the most are T visas. which are pretty similar to U visas, but specific to victims of human trafficking. So again, these are visas that encourage survivors to come forward and talk to law enforcement. They help build that relationship between law enforcement and immigrant communities. And then once the visa is approved, you get a 4-year visa. After 3 years with that visa, you can apply for your green card. And after 5 years with your green card, you can apply for citizenship. So again, a long path to citizenship, but a path to citizenship. Those are kind of the bread and butter of our work. Another thing that we do is asylum. We take asylum cases ourselves. We also have a program that we're working on with Catholic Social Services, because Catholic Social Services got a lot of the Afghan evacuees. And so we're kind of working in tandem with them, and we are mentoring pro bono attorneys. So what we've done is we had a continuing legal education program to kind of get people to come in, and then we assigned cases to pro bono attorneys. We're doing continuing legal education programs specifically for this kind of cohort. So focusing on issues that Afghan evacuees would face. We're doing office hours. Honestly, my coworker is doing the majority of the work. Cindy Wood, she's doing great work. And this is, I think it's a really great way for us to help Afghan refugees who need help. It's a really tough system to navigate. And it's a great way for us to have other attorneys get some experience in immigration while getting the support that they need, the mentorship and the services that the pro bono attorneys need to feel safe and comfortable doing this work, because it's complicated work. So that's what AIJ does. We're trying to get people safety and stability. And I guess I just really appreciate being here and talking about it. So I can take questions if anyone's got any.
Anything that the average person can do?
We'll always take pro bono attorneys. I guess that's not the average person though. If you speak another language, we're always looking for interpreters. If somebody is willing to come in regularly, we can use volunteers, but it does require some, we don't have things like envelope stuffing that we can do. So it takes a little bit of training. Anything else?
You mentioned that cases where there's violence against
Mhm.
them. Is that here in Alaska, when you're here in Alaska?
Sorry, I guess I forgot that I'm supposed to repeat the question. The question was whether when we're talking about people who have experienced violence, whether that's just for people who have experienced violence in Alaska or other countries. So asylum is for people who are fleeing persecution in their home country. So that's people who have experienced violence in their home country or have a well-founded fear that they will experience violence in their home country. The crime victim visas, so the VAWA self-petition, the U visas for victims of crime, or the T visas, victims of human trafficking, that's for people who have experienced victimization in the United States. And then there are country-specific programs. Some people might have heard about temporary protected status, where DHS designates a country and says, okay, things are bad in this country. People who are here don't have to go back for 18 months. And then usually that just keeps getting renewed. So for example, Haiti just got TPS, Ukraine, Afghanistan.
I was reading that there's a new program being rolled out by the State Department in which 5 U.S. citizens could agree to sponsor a family for a specific amount of time, maybe 6 months or something, housing, education, food. Are you familiar with that program? And
I think so. So the question was, there's a program where U.S. citizens, like a group of U.S. citizens, can sponsor people to come to the United States. I think what you're talking about is humanitarian parole. Yeah, so you file a form that says that you'll support somebody. I think you have to have the name of the person if they can come to the United States. It's working really well for Ukraine. I have heard that ones from Afghanistan are taking a while to process. But yeah, it's supposed to be a way to get people out of those countries, but know that they have somebody to support them or group to support them in the United States. And I think they're usually good for 2 years. The people can have permission to be in the US for 2 years. Any other?
Like, percentage of green card or approved from like there's a lot of times. Kind of guaranteed to go through the whole crowd or not still.
Yeah, so the question was what percentage of green cards are approved? Ours are pretty high. But so the tough part, so we screen people before we take their cases, and we don't usually take cases unless we think we can be successful, because we don't want to be handing a bunch of somebody's information over to the government if it's going to put them in danger. So for our office, it's pretty high. I'd say again, the 90 percentile, something like that. But that's because our clients are working with attorneys and we're screening and we're making sure that they're eligible for what they're applying for.
What type of things would keep people from being nominated? Like, they have employment, and show, like, education, what kind of people, what kind of cases do you take for?
Yeah. So the question was, what can prevent someone from having a green card? So the baseline, I guess, the way to explain this is that the baseline is that you don't get a green card. So if somebody just comes to the United States and is here forever, just being in the United States doesn't make you eligible for a green card. So you have to be able to show that there's a reason for you to be, you have to fit into one of the boxes that Congress has created for getting a green card. So that's kind of the first hurdle, is getting yourself into a category that gets you a green card. And then once you're in that category, there are things that can knock you out and make it so that you're not eligible. So that can be, depending on the category you're looking for, that can be immigration history, like if you've come in and out of the United States without authorization, criminal history. Those are probably the big ones. Then there's a bunch of like kind of random ones, but the toughest part is kind of getting into a category that gets you a green card. So that would be like marrying a US citizen, one of the crime victim cases that we talked about. Question was, how old do you have to be to volunteer? I don't know that we have a firm age limit. I'd say 18 preferably. If anybody, I think our language interpreter center does require that people are 18 before they can interpret. Part of that's that you can end up dealing with some really hard things, and we want to make sure that people are ready for that. In the back.
How do people find out about you?
Yeah, so the question was, how do people find out about us? We have a website, we have a Facebook presence, but I think the biggest one is word of mouth. Because especially in the undocumented communities, there's a lot talking about like what resources are available. So people find out that way. We also have a pretty good relationship with the domestic violence shelters and the other legal service providers, so they contact us. And we try to keep a good relationship with law enforcement, so the police know to call us and not Immigration and Customs Enforcement, hopefully.
The interpreters, legal interpreters or community interpreters, what is like the background?
Yeah, so the question was, what's the background of the interpreters? Before, let's see, so our language interpreter center will do kind of an information session, and then they have a week of training. Before the week of training, they have people take a oral test over the phone. There's some company that they call and do a conversation with over the phone. And that's just to ensure that people are fluent in the language that they say they're fluent in. And then you can take the course, which makes you a trained interpreter. After that, if you really want to, you can go through the process to become a certified interpreter. So that would be like working with the court system. So we do the trained interpreters so that people understand the ethics, and we have vetted them and made sure that they're good, are competent, fluent in their languages. And then if you want to go further, there's more certifications available. And then they do kind of continuing education too, so that they can work on things like medical terminology and legal terminology, things like that. How many languages do you need to know to be an interpreter? 2, English and another language. But if you know more, the more the better, I guess.
Do you find that it's difficult if there's an interpreter and the client or victim and they don't want to share, the community is fairly small? How often is that a problem?
Yeah, so the question was, we're in Alaska, we have small communities. How do you handle interpreters in small communities? It's something that we are aware of, and we try to be careful about making sure that if it's a really small community, we'll use telephonic interpreters so that, we'll talk to the clients and maybe with a telephonic interpreter, make sure that they're okay with the interpreters within the community. If they're not, we can try to use a nationwide system so that we're not asking people to disclose to people within their community. All right, anything else? Yep.
You mentioned you had a grant that's fairly broad. Do you get your funding from the state, federal government, or where's funding that?
The majority of the question was, where's the funding come from? The majority of it is the federal government. And then if people don't fit into the grant requirements, then we charge on a sliding scale. So that kind of gives us some flexibility with our funding so that we can do things that aren't squarely within the grants.
A high percentage of deportations for Alaska. Your point of view, or what are they losing fair deportation?
So the question was, are there a lot of deportations in Alaska and are they fair? We have one Immigration and Customs Enforcement office and it's in Anchorage. So we don't, we don't get too many, we don't have a lot of raids and things like that. Say that and hope that we keep that way. Most of if somebody's picked up in a raid, they get sent down and they're detained, they go to Tacoma because that's the closest detention center. And then but if somebody's not detained, then they can do their process in Anchorage. Whether it's fair, that's a tough. I think attorneys are really important, especially in the immigration system. It's a really complicated and hard system with really high consequences, and you are not guaranteed an attorney. It's not like the criminal system, so you can have an attorney, but not at the government's expense. And I struggle to find that fair. Just in general, I think that when you're dealing with consequences that serious, and particularly with people who are not familiar with the US systems, then you should have an attorney. Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the questions and having me.
All right, I lost my prayer book at once. There it is. Okay.
Okay, we're now going to move to the Misha Berach, our prayer for healing, on page 371 of our prayer books. And in our own community, we're thinking about these members who are in need of healing. Emily Weaver, Ginger Spiro, John Johnson, Pat Victor, Janice Breeze, Ross Rumack, Cheryl Lambriani, Ian Clift, Kelly Bot Eli, Hannah Franklin, Dale Shubin, and Frank Erskine. If there's someone who you are thinking of who is in need of healing, please feel free to say their names out loud or in your hearts as my hand crosses the room.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekol habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We now move to the Elenu on page 587 of your prayer books. And when you arrive there, I invite you to stand with me. We now turn to page 591. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Love each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech. May we never lift up our hands to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. We now turn to our mourner's Kaddish on page 598 in our prayer book. And we're thinking about these yahrzeits this week. Max Arnovitz, Jean Xander Martin, Ernest Nathan, Salomon Simon, and Henrietta Wolf. And when it appears Shloshim for Grace Gilson, and appears Shiva for Frederick Dichter. If there's someone you are thinking of, please feel free to say their names out loud or in your hearts as my hand crosses the room. Zikunom Livracha. May the memory be for a blessing. Git Kedal v'Git Kadash Shemei Rabbah. Bi'alma Divra Chriyote v'Amlik Malchute. B'chayechon uvyamechon uv'chayerachol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mivarak Le'olam Ulalmei Almaya. Yitzbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yibromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemeda kudasha barichu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata, da'imaran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabamin shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Osei shalom v'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, amen. You may be seated. Okay, announcements. All right, I wrote them down. We have so many. So we're working on our high holiday fundraiser to bring back Cantor Nancy and to help make sure that our high holidays are free for everyone. So we really would like to be able to do that. And we also have a awesome matching grant. So your money is doubled every time you offer to help with our fundraiser. So looking forward to that. We will have in 2 weeks from now, we will have something called Repro Shabbat. That stands for Reproductive Shabbat. And we will have 2 guest speakers from Planned Parenthood come in and talk to us about that. By the way, it's a nationwide program. So everyone in every Jewish community in the country is observing that. And then you might have already seen, but we have our Purim party on March 6th. It's going to be called a Royal Purim. It's going to be a dance contest. No, sorry, a costume contest, dance party. And a Humantashen contest as well. And it's also a potluck. So please come March 6th at 6 p.m. It's a Monday, by the way. And then on Sunday is our Tu B'Shvat Seder at 10 a.m. You're all invited to come to that too, if you would like, where we celebrate the new year for the trees. So it's our Tu B'Shvat Seder. And then we are now having in-person Thursday Minyan here at 8:30 a.m. So we're also happen to go to Kava Pancakes afterwards. So you can come for the prayer, stay for the pancakes if you want, or come to the pancakes. I wouldn't judge you for that either. Anyway, so that's every Thursday, 8:30, but we're still doing our Zoom Minyan on Wednesdays as well at 8:30. So that's Zoom. My daughter trying to steal my thunder as usual. Okay, I think those are all the announcements. Did I forget anything? Yes, Colleen.
The book club, March 19th, and it is the Button Man by Andrew Rosenstein. I read it.
Thank you. So March 19th, what's the book again? The Button Man. Okay, that's usually on the Kol Shalom though. So but thank you for that. Appreciate it. Anything else that I'm missing? Great. I'm hoping maybe the Mitchell Brothers figured out a closing melody. You're not? Oh my, I give you all this time. Announcements is for you to figure out what the closing melody is. Okay. I missed something. Yes, Cameron. You know no, the religious school and some other people are bringing food, so you shouldn't have to. Yeah. And it's by the way, the food's for tasting, not for eating. It's a whole thing. It's a very religious experience. Yes. Get ready. Okay. Then Alami said? There's one more. Yeah. Thank you. It's a miracle over here right now. Okay. All right. Is that all the announcements? Yes. Okay. Don't allow on a page.
625.
6 what?
25.
625. Good luck with trying to keep these two over here.
Adon olam, Nasher malach, v'terugo, Yitzi nivra, leit nasa, v'chefso kol, Azar melech, shemo nikra, ve'acharei, kichlot hakol, levado, yimlok nora, ve'hu haya, Adon olam, Hashem alach, v'terem kol, Yitzi nivra, le'ed המלך שמו נקרא.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm realizing I did forget one more announcement. Next Friday is our family Shabbat Friday. So that means it'll be stories, it'll be more songs, stuff like that. Even more songs than what they're offering. You know what I mean? All right. We'll see ya in the Oneg right in our multi-purpose room. Shabbat Shalom.